5 states are holding presidential primaries Tuesday. Cybersecurity experts warn several countries are attempting to influence the outcomes. Nancy Chen reports on what's being done to guard against foreign interference.
Cybersecurity experts are working overtime to protect the upcoming presidential election from hackers, and they're tackling the threat one state at a time.
Most experts agree that this is far more complex and far more potentially dangerous than anything we've seen.
The University of Southern California Election Cybersecurity Initiative is organizing training from coast to coast. Adam Powell is the executive director.
So what we're seeing this year is far more than in 2016. Russia and China and Iran are very, very active in this area.
Just last week, Google's threat analysis group reported foreign actors had already targeted Joe Biden's and President Trump's campaign staffers. While there was no sign accounts were compromised, Powell has been warned of dozens of countries using cyber attacks and disinformation in attempts to influence the election. There's also the added challenge of candidates and staffers working from home.
That means they're using computers and phones that may be their personal devices that are almost certainly less secure than the devices that are in their campaign on election offices.
The initiative is halfway through its plan of holding virtual workshops in all 50 states, inviting candidates, campaign workers, and local officials to learn how to protect elections. Arkansas State Election Commissioner Belinda Harris Ritter joined a recent workshop. She oversees election boards for 75 counties.
How much of a concern is this for you?
Well, I think it's a concern for absolutely everyone who has anything to do with running an election.
The security initiative is funded by Google and nonpartisan. Its organizers say their only candidate is democracy. Nancy Chen, CBS News, New York.
For more, David Becker joins me now. He is the executive director at the Center for Election Innovation and Research. David, thanks very much for being with us. Georgia, West Virginia, Nevada, North Dakota, and South Carolina all held primaries Tuesday. What are these states doing to ensure election security?
Well, of course, during the pandemic, the issues relating to foreign adversaries trying to interfere with our elections have not gone away. And we're still have to be very careful and vigilant about that. And what we've seen since 2016 is that many states, Georgia and South Carolina among them, have moved since 2016 from paperless digital voting to paper-based voting systems that can be audited to ensure that the counts were accurate. And that's a big move. All of the states, all 50 states, are sharing information about potential threats. They are working with DHS to assess whether foreign adversaries are trying to intrude on their systems. We have come light years from 2016 in terms of securing our systems.
So it's interesting, some states moving to paper. A lot of states, though, are using these new voting machines to replace the unsecure and unreliable ones in 2016. Why are these new machines purported to be more secure?
Well, all of them produce a paper ballot that is then tabulated, is counted on a separate device. So if you look at every single battleground state, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, all of them use paper ballots. In fact, about 90+% of all American voters will be voting on a paper ballot in November. That is a big improvement from 2016. And because we have paper ballots, we have a permanent record that we can then go back and look at of what the voters' intent was at the time they cast the ballot to make sure that the technology we rely upon to count all of those ballots quickly and accurately is working as it's supposed to.
At the same time, some of these new voting machines caused some problems. In Georgia Tuesday, some voters had to wait in line for hours. Do we know what happened?
Well, it actually appears like almost all of it was not due to the voting machines. The voting machines were working as they were intended, but what we really saw was a lack of an adequate number of polling places, and perhaps even more importantly, due to the pandemic, not enough poll workers working at the polls, and a lot of them hadn't received the kind of training they needed. There were a lot of poll workers that didn't show up or canceled at the last minute. And so there were places where the poll workers who were there weren't as familiar with how to set up the machines and use them, and that caused some problems. I can tell you, talking with election officials in the state and talking with people familiar with what was going on there, there were actually very, very few voting machines that had a problem. I think fewer than a dozen needed to be pulled and replaced in the entire state of Georgia out of many tens of thousands. But we are seeing a problem that even as much as we're pushing mail voting, as much as we're trying to give voters a lot of choices with the pandemic, that a lot of voters are still saying they prefer to vote in person, and we need to be prepared for that for November.
Let's talk about vote by mail. Many states are relying on that option due to the coronavirus. How big of a role do you see that playing in the November election?
Well, I don't think there's going to be a single state that doesn't see more mail ballots returned than ever before in November because of the pandemic and the convenience of mail voting and the options that might be presented there to vote conveniently at home. So every state is going to see more mail balloting, but the level of mail balloting is going to vary by state. States like California and Arizona, which were already at 3/4 or more of their voters voting by mail, it's very easy for them to get to 90% or more. But states like Pennsylvania and Georgia, where they saw only around 5 or 6% of their voters voting by mail historically, they're going to be lucky to get to 40 or 50%. And that's a really big win for them. That's great. That means fewer voters are going to show up in the polling place. But we still need to have really ample opportunities for voters to go vote in person safely and conveniently in many, many states across the country.
A lot of work yet to be done before November. David Becker for us. David, thank you very much.
Thank you.